Well, we're back from sunny Scarborough, and after a weekend full of fun, with a bag full of books and a belly full of beer, you could say we are, quite literally, full of it. This is episode 14.
This is Partners in Crime with Adam Croft and Robert Dawes.
Well, Bob, we're back in the studio again, and 14 episodes in. We're mostly in the studio. We did have a brief sojourn in the dining room for the Poison special, and last week on the beach. How can it get better than that?
Oh, there's nothing like the British seaside resort to restore one's energy, one's mental vitality, to put on a bit too much weight eating fish and chips and toffee apples. But didn't we have a ball? It was absolutely fantastic.
Yes, absolutely brilliant, and it's one of the perks of the job, I guess, that we get to go on holiday to the seaside and call it a works function.
Yes, Books by the Beach, a brilliantly organised festival, great fun, superb guests. So if you didn't make it this year, keep an eye on it and book your tickets for next.
Well, we're going back next year after the success of this year, that's for sure. Yes, we've got a great guest on the show today. We always have great guests, otherwise we wouldn't bother. This week we've got Angela Marsons, who is the multi best-selling author of the D.I. Kim Stone books. She sold 2 million books in 2 years, which is absolutely extraordinary.
It's 1 million books a year.
Yes, you're right. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if it was structured like that, but it's an incredible achievement. It really is.
It is, yeah, and insanely jealous. She's had a lot of success, and she deserves every single bit of it, because as we're going to find out in the interview soon when we ask her, I've got some notes here to say that she was rejected by numerous publishers over 25 years, and she never gave up, and that's it's a lesson for us all in life, I think, that just keep plugging away, and sooner or later it will happen.
Well, yes, it's all you can say. I mean, we talk to new writers and people thinking about wanting to write their first books, and they always ask the same question, what should we do? And the first thing is to write the book, but then don't stop. No. If you're a writer, if you're a storyteller, if it's in your blood, you won't be able to help yourself from carrying on. And with good fortune and good sense, and also finished stories to be able to for people to read and to be able to sell, there's every opportunity to find your place in the marketplace and get your books read. So yes, sheer tenacity, and Angela is a shining example of that, as I say in the interview of never give up, never give up, never give up. She didn't, she hasn't, and she's a roaring success, and deservedly so. Absolutely.
This week I've had absolutely no chance to read or watch anything. I've been packing and unpacking and repacking bags for Books on the Beach and Books by the Beach even, and also nipping off for a little family holiday in between. So I've had absolutely no chance to do anything. But I understand that, Bob, because you have a man to pack your bags and unpack your bags for you, you've had lots of time.
Oh, yes. Well, there's nothing like having a personal valet to make one's life altogether more palatable and easygoing, not just for myself but for everyone I know. Yes, I have my own personal Jeeves. It's a personality imperfection. I have. Yes. Yeah. I am packing. Where am I packing to go to? I'm packing to go somewhere next week. Where am I going? I'm going down to Dorset next week. I need to look at my diary a little more often, don't I? I'm very fortunate that my wife Amy says, right, it's Thursday, you should be in X, and happily dispatches me there.
I bet she does. Yes.
Yes. So yes, Amy is my Jeeves.
And because of your wonderful Amy Jeeves, you have plenty of time to be reading. I noticed you've got a couple of books on the desk there.
Well, yes, I do. I've got two things here, actually. The first is The Monogram Murders, which is the first book by Sophie Hannah, who takes the story of Hercule Poirot from the great Dame Agatha and recreates it for us. And I have, this has been out for some time. I've written written at least 2 other books, Poirot books since. They've been a huge success. And I read this one, and I have to say I understand why. Someone said the other day, well, there's so many Agatha Christie books, well, surely there's enough. Why does anyone need to write any more? But there is a big market for these recreations, certainly in the hands of such talented writers as Sophie. The Jeeves and Wooster stories, indeed, are written by Sebastian Faulks, and Anthony Horowitz does Sherlock Holmes, does he?
I think so, yeah.
Like
And
James Bond.
being redone as well.
Oh, whatever. Anyway, so listeners will put me right on that. But this is a great book. Hercule Poirot's quiet supper in a London coffee house is interrupted when a young woman confides to him that she is about to be murdered. She is terrified, but begs Poirot not to find and punish her killer. Once she is dead, she insists, justice will have been done. Well, there we are, classic Agatha Christie set up there, and wonderfully executed by Sophie. Now, so that's the monogram, Murders, and as I say, there are 2 other books, I think, in the series which are out also. So if you're an Agatha Christie fan, pick one up and give it a read. You won't be disappointed. Which brings me to another part of crime fiction. It's not just books, novels, stories. Crime fiction exists, of course, in television and film, on radio, and indeed upon the stage. So there are a couple of productions that I've heard about recently, which you might want to look out for. The first is The Case of the Frightened Lady, an adaptation of Edgar Wallace's novel, which is on tour currently with the Classic Thriller Company. This is a company that has been set up by Bill Kenwright. Many of you will have heard of our famous and wonderful entrepreneur, producer, man of theatre, director, chairman of Everton, an extraordinary force of nature, and this is just one of his productions that are out at the moment. I was happy enough to appear in the first production of the Classic Thriller Company a couple of years ago, Rehearsal for Murder, and it's a great company, full of well-known faces and stars of the stage. So catch that at a theatre near you. The Case of the Frightened Lady, Edgar Wallace, Classic Thriller Company.
And that's touring the country, is it?
That's touring the country.
Marvellous.
Also, I have heard news of a production of The Girl on the Train that is going to be put on by the West Yorkshire Playhouse, I think, over the spring. So the Paula Hawkins success, if you've read the book and you've seen the film, you may want to go and see the stage adaptation. It stars the wonderfully talented actress Jill Halfpenny, who many people in the UK will know from EastEnders, and will also know for her considerably successful stage career as well. So that's breaking news, to me anyway. The Girl on the Train, West Yorkshire Playhouse, I think sometime over the spring. And finally...
It's quite good timing as well. So I was just going to say on that, The Girl on the Train, that's great timing, because psychological thrillers are still huge. They can still capitalise on that enormously. And they've also got the benefit of hindsight in that the film obviously changed quite a few things. It was set in America. There were various things changed that some people who'd read the book weren't happy about. I've not actually seen the film myself, so I can't comment. But they've now got the benefit of hindsight, I suppose, that they can see what perhaps didn't go down so well with the film version.
Yes.
And adapt that for the stage. I mean, how they're actually physically going to adapt it is... I mean, I've got a bit of a theatre background myself, but just thinking about how they're going to actually physically stage that book, it just...
Well, I mean, it will begin with the words. It will begin with the adaptation. The writer, who I haven't got their name actually. I think there are two writers who have adapted it, and it will begin with the words, as it always does. Words, and then theatre design and direction in this country has just progressed extraordinarily over the last 2 decades. So there is seemingly no problem or challenge that a play can offer that I don't think cannot now be resolved creatively by the talents of a designer, director, lighting design. By designer, I mean it's not just the setting, it's not just the set, it's the design of the sound, the design of the music, the design of the costumes, every aspect of it, and all the other things that productions can bring out of the paint box to bring a story vividly to life in the theatre. So it'll be very interesting. You're right. they may well have learnt from the book and the film. Sounds like a game of charades, this, doesn't it? But it will be its own distinct entity at the West Yorkshire Playhouse. So I'm going to try and see it. It sounds like a fantastic project. And lastly, the very last one is something I haven't seen, but recently received a production at the Watermill in Newbury in this country, a production of a very successful American show called Murder for Two. It's a musical with just 2 actors who play 14 characters. It's been on Broadway, off Broadway for some time. I don't know whether it's still running actually, but it's been hugely successful. It's got a very good production over here at Newbury. I'm sure there's going to be a future life for it, but I also believe there are productions all over the US. So if you're listening to us now in the United States of America, which I hope some of you are, then look out for Murder for Two. You may have seen it already or heard about it, but it sounds like a fantastic, entertaining musical which will give fascinating insights into crime, murder, mystery, and my favourite word this on all these podcasts is skullduggery. There we are, skullduggery set to music. That sounds right up my cup of tea. So there we are, 3 stage productions of crime fiction coming your way at some point. Catch them if you can.
Well, you mentioned our American listenership there, and we do have a large and growing American listenership. We've got listeners all over the world, I think in 30 or 30 odd different countries. I think we have listeners.
Gosh.
So we do need to be getting some more international guests on, some more American writers and American guests too. If you'd like to suggest one, please do get in touch, and we'll get in touch with them and see what we can do. You can email us hello@partnersincrime.online. We're on Twitter @crimeficpodcast or facebook.com/Partners in Crime Podcast. And now our guest this week is Angela Marsons, who we spoke about a little bit earlier. We're going to be chatting to her in just a moment. But before that, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to make sure you don't miss. To make sure you don't miss any future episodes. It's completely free and always will do it. Just make sure that the episodes are sent directly to you rather than you having to hunt them out each week. Now, the podcast is greatly appreciated. That's not the word I'm looking for at all. I've just gone completely off on a tangent. We greatly appreciate our sponsors is probably what I was trying to say.
Oh, is that what you were trying? Well, you didn't quite, but I mean, I think I know what you were talking about. Yeah. I certainly do now.
I had an absolute brain fart there. And I was trying to say we greatly appreciate our sponsors, and it's Kobo, basically, is what I'm trying to say. It's been a very long week.
This is the man who knows he has the power to edit things out.
Yes, although I'm not going to now you said that. That's all staying in, just so that I can look like an honest man. Kobo have more than 5 million titles available in their online bookshop. You don't need an e-reader or a special device to read any of the books either. Just enter the promo code CRIME when you get to the checkout, and Kobo will give you 90% off of your first ebook purchase. But before you choose a book to buy from them, you might want to hear from this week's guest. Angela Marsons is a British author of crime fiction from the Black Country in the West Midlands. She sold 1 million novels within a year of publishing her first crime thriller, and I believe now has over 2 million. Angela was rejected by numerous publishers over 25 years while she was working as a security guard at the Merryhill shopping centre, but has since gone on to be extraordinarily successful with her D.I. Kim Stone books. Angela, welcome to the show. You must be feeling pretty smug now.
No, not smug, because I still don't actually quite believe that, everything that's happened in the last couple of years. It's been a mad couple of years. But people say, it was an overnight success that was 25 years in the making. So I do actually still pinch myself every single day, because the dream for all of those years was to write for a living. So anything on top of that is, a bonus, because all I ever wanted to do was to be able to write and call it a job. Which, of course, it doesn't feel like a job, because I still absolutely love what I do. So I just feel very, very lucky.
We should actually say at this moment that in case any of the listeners are wondering what the background noises are there, we have actually got 2 guests on the show technically today, haven't we? You're not on your own there.
No, my parrot Nelson is
Talkative.
Just about 4 feet away from us. He's very talkative. I'm really hoping he doesn't start swearing.
Oh, well, we might
because
have
he
to
does
bleep him
tend to
out.
do.
We have the same problem ourselves.
Yeah, I have to bleep Bob out occasionally.
Well, I believe that you've actually put a sort of a little blanket over the cage. Is that right?
Yes, I've put his night over, but it doesn't seem to be doing a great deal to quieten him down, to be
Adam
honest.
does the same with me, and it doesn't work either.
I have to smother him to stop him talking sometimes. Welcome to the show, though, Nelson, as well. Angela, 25 years of trying and being rejected by publishers. I mean, what kept you going? Was it just that kind of burning dream that that one day you would? I mean, what was the goal? Was it to be published, or did you think, yeah, one day I'll sell 2 million books? What was it that kept you going?
No, I mean, I never dreamed of what might happen. I think what kept me going was I'd write a book and I'd send it out for submission. It would get rejected. I'd write another book and send it out. I think the hope was always maybe the next. And as I'm sure you know, any letter that you get back from an agent or a publisher that gives you even, the tiniest bit of encouragement or positive feedback can go a long, long way. So those occasional letters definitely helped. And I was doing this back in the old days where it wasn't electronic submissions. It was going down to the post office and sending off 20 envelopes with stamped addressed envelopes inside. And I would often feel sorry for the postman. I could see the sympathy on his face as he would drop them back through my letterbox. But it was always, even though the rejection was hard, I was always disappointed when the last one had come back, because then the hope had gone. So I'd always then be quick to get another 20 submissions off in the post, and, just to have that hope that one would, just say yes, or send me the full manuscript. That was always a high point if somebody asked to see the full thing.
And during this time, Angela, did you have any mentors at all? Did you have any people who were encouraging you to keep on going, or was it totally yourself and friends and loved ones? Did you have any professional mentoring at all?
Definitely no professionals at all, because, as I say, this was in a time where you didn't have contact with authors. So although I did a lot of reading of people like Val McDermott, Karen Slaughter, Lisa Gardner, that kind of book, you didn't have any kind of contact. I'd never written to an author or commented or anything like that. The encouragement purely came from my partner, Julie, who, we've been a team now for 35 years. And every rejection that came back, she would say, it's their loss. It will happen. It will happen. You just have to keep going. And even on the darkest days where I couldn't, stand the thought of looking at a piece of paper or picking up a pencil, she would tell me to just go and sit in my chair and look out the window, knowing full well that I wouldn't be able to resist the lure of a blank page and a stack of pencils, because, I'd just pick a pencil up and then I might start scrawling a few words, and then before I knew it, there was another idea that was burning and just had to be written. So she always managed to get me back to the desk on the dark days.
Oh, I think a lot of authors will recognise that the support of loved ones is essential to the whole process. The unsung heroes of the writing world, as it were. But you did keep going. How did you do this? You were holding down a full-time job. Did you rush home and write? Did you manage to do any writing while you were working? Or whatever? Did you have a process that you used to actually get these books written and finished?
No, not a process at all. I would just often write before I went to work, and then I would write when I came back from work. I would write weekends, days off, holidays. We didn't go on holiday, so holidays from work would be spent writing. So it was any chance I got, really. to just get some words down on paper. There was always some kind of idea burning that I would want to explore after, one project was finished, and, something else that I wanted to have a look at, because at that point I wasn't really writing crime. I was writing more women's fiction, and I was writing the books that I thought that publishers and agents would want, with characters that I thought that publishers and agents would like, set in areas, again, that I thought, readers would like, rather than a character that had been in my head for years, in a setting that I know very well, and stories that, I wanted to try and have a go at writing, because I'd never tried to write crime. It was what I loved to read, but I'd never tried writing it. So, one day, I suppose I call Silent Scream a rebellion book, because it was a case of, right, I'm going to write a book with the character instead. Even though I don't like her very much, she doesn't sound very nice. I'm going to write this character. I'm going to base it in the Black Country, my area, and I'm going to try and write a crime book. And 90,000 words later, I had Silent Scream.
Wow. I mean, you were talking about when you were working, Angela. You were, I believe, working as a security guard at Merry Hill Shopping Centre, which those kinds of jobs where you're observing people all day and you're seeing kind of all walks of life, it always kind of strikes me that they're the kinds of jobs that must be really kind of rich, fertile ground for characters in your books.
Well, they are, because it's like any place where you're going to get a lot of people. You get all kinds of people, and I think bits of different situations and different people that you've met that you either remember for positive or negative reasons tend to stay with you. So I tend not to base characters on people I've met, but I think they're all sort of mixtures of everybody that I've met, if you know what I mean, a certain personality trait or a mannerism. So it's like a montage of lots of people. But yes, I definitely met some interesting characters in the security industry.
I mean, talking of characters, tell us about Kim Stone, D.R. Kim Stone, your central character in your series. Who is she? It always fascinates me, because, obviously publishers have their way of describing characters, and readers do as well, but it always interests me to hear how the author describes their own central character. Tell us a little bit about Kim.
Well, she's. I'm honest enough to say that she's quite rude. She's brusque. She's to the point. She's direct. But she's also very passionate about justice and fighting the corner of the underdog. So I like to say, although she doesn't show it very often, there is a heart in there somewhere. But she's seriously lacking in social skills. And so tends to rub people up the wrong way. So that's what she's like in a nutshell.
She's certainly a lot of fun, that's for sure. We spoke a little bit about the history you had with sort of trying to find publishers and getting those rejections, and then finally being approached by Bookouture. How did that come about for you? Was it a case of, they were some that you'd submitted to in the past? Were they kind of aware of what you were writing and the kind of the struggles that you were having there? How did that come about for you?
Well, it came about because of a certain lady named Keshini Naidu, who was a reader at an agency that did take me on. It didn't end well, unfortunately. And then some time afterwards, Keshini left the agency too. And I was at the point where things couldn't actually be any worse for myself and my partner, because I'd taken voluntary redundancy from the security job after 19 years of being at Merry Hill. And we were at the end of that period, and we didn't have two pennies to rub together. We were selling our possessions to make the mortgage payment. We were borrowing money from family members, and we had never, ever been in such a dire financial situation. And I just managed to secure a job working 12-hour night shifts. And suddenly, from nowhere, I had a call from Keshini saying, I hope you don't mind, but I've submitted Silent Scream to a young dynamic digital publisher called Bookouture. And this just came from nowhere. And and I said, no, that's fine. And I couldn't allow myself to get excited or worked up about it, because it was taking me all my time to just focus on doing the full-time job after the disappointment upon disappointment. And so when their publishing director Claire sent me an email when she was reading Silent Scream, I was looking through the email for the word but, and it said, I'm reading and loving Silent Scream, can you tell me any other ideas you've got? Well, that's an email I couldn't type quickly enough. I could barely type it, to be honest. My fingers just wouldn't, because there was no but. So I think it was a week later, they offered me a 4-book deal, and that was also with the cherry on the top that Keshni was going to be my editor. And we'd worked together, on books while I was with the agency. So that was just absolutely amazing. And we've been working together on the books ever since.
And the Book Tour team are fantastic. As you said, I've met them myself and had a few chats with them, and they really seem to know what they're doing. I mean, they obviously have huge faith in you as well, because I've seen, I don't know if this is true or not, but I saw something online that said you signed them for a total of 16 books in the Kim Stone series. Is that right?
Absolutely. It was 4 initially. And then when Silent Scream did well, we signed for another 4. And then they asked me if I wanted to sign for any more. I gave them some ideas, and they asked me to sign for another 8. And I am more than happy to sign with Bookature for as many books as they want, because not only do they treat their authors brilliantly, loyalty is very important to me, and after all those years, they gave me the opportunity to share, what I do with readers, and that was all I ever wanted. And I get to write for a living, which, as I've said, that was always the dream. So there isn't any publisher that could give me any more than what Bookature have. So, I'll stay with them until they get security to remove me from the building, basically.
Well, they really do have an extraordinary business set up, Bookature, and I've heard nothing but positive things from other writers who have worked with them. So, I mean, you've landed happily on your feet there, and with an editor that you knew. How important is that relationship with your editor when working on your books?
Very, very, very important, because it's each book we work on, I learn something. It's almost like some of the comments that she gives me are still in my mind when I'm writing the next book. So, I don't want her to have to tell me the same twice. So I kind of, once I've written the first draft, Keshni calls Julie her first editor. Keshni never wants the books until Julie's gone through it. They have quite a good relationship, where they might both pick on me about a certain point, and I can't fight the two of them, to be fair. And so sort of like I've got voices in my head, so to speak, as I'm writing the book. So with each book, I learn a little bit more, but also she gets the way I work and knows how best to, get me to write that book to the best it can be. And it might be just an odd suggestion here or an odd suggestion here, that she knows I'll go away and think about, and then, come back with probably 20 different suggestions. After meeting with Julie, we'll sit on the deck, have a cake, cup of coffee, a meeting, and thrash it out. And then I'll go Kesh. But no, it's incredibly important working with Kesh.
And to find someone who's so good at their job, I mean, very often, a lot of writers, not a lot of writers, but some writers I've talked to seem to think that the editing process is not necessarily that important, and they're quite happy with a good proofread. And I always stand aghast and say, how can you how can you think that? To actually get someone who can look at your work objectively, who can really help you guide through any problems that you may, structural problems or research problems that you may have missed or whatever, is absolutely vital to the whole process. I mean, I've struggled in the early days, certainly, with proofreading that wasn't editing. It was grammatically better than I'd sent it out, but it was, as regards structure and telling stories and development of characters and that sort of feedback, you didn't get any of that. So it's great to hear that you've got such a close relationship with not only a friend but a top class professional who knows your work.
And the books that you wrote when you were, when you were still working as a security guard, Angela, when the ones that had been rejected, have you ever been tempted to kind of repurpose or use any of those kind of those rejected books, or do you take elements from those, or is everything that you write now, after you've kind of had that first book deal and everything's changed since then, is everything that you write kind of after that, or have you been sort of tempted to reuse any of those earlier books and think that actually they're still good, they can still be used?
Well, I did once I separated from the agent, I did self-publish 2 of the books through the Amazon KDP program, and I didn't do anything, because I didn't have a clue. They were just sitting there, really. And because they were different to the crime books, once I got taken on by Bookature, I didn't publicise them or mention them, because I didn't want people to think they were getting more Kim Stone. But people started to happen upon them and started to buy them and leave reviews, which was great. But I didn't mention them, if you know what I mean. Like I said, I didn't want to cause any confusion. And then what I did, I think it was last year or like the year before, Bookature took them on and repackaged them. We edited them together, and we made those 2 books the best that they can be. So I do have those titles with Bookature as well.
Right.
And do you map out an entire structure for your books? When you begin to write a book, do you know where you're going? Do you know how it will end? Do you have a structure which you adhere to, or do you just start writing and go?
Normally, I'll just start writing, because normally the strongest point for me is that I know where I want to start. I don't always know where I'm going to finish, and that can change, during the course, as I'm sure you know. But I tend to always know where I want to start, what situation I want Kim to be in, how I want the team to be, that kind of thing. So I'll start writing, the first few chapters, and then my books always grow organically rather than structured and plotted. If I try and plot a book, I lose interest, because a lot of the joy for me is it growing organically as I write. That plot twists and character traits all start to come. That's what I call my sandpit. First draft for me is my time to play. Draft 2 is about structure and timing and pace and all that, but draft 1, that's my time. So I love for it to grow organically. So I normally have an idea the first 3 or 4 chapters, and then the ideas start to come. So I'm normally writing in one A4 notepad, and I have another notepad to the side of me just to scroll down, any notes, ideas, thoughts, ideas for research. Excuse me. Then normally I get to about chapter 10 and realise I need to make a loose plan. And that's just on one A4 piece of paper, split into the number of days, that I want it set over, which is normally 5 or 6 days. And, start just jotting down quick scenes that I want to happen, on each day. And that's normally by about chapter 10 that I start to think about a plan. But it's after things have evolved in my head and gotten stronger while I'm actually writing the book. So I'm definitely not a planner.
No, I mean we've spoken a little bit there about the process of your writing and the way in which you put the books together. I mean going back to your publisher again, Bookerture. I mean, one of the ways in which they're successful is the publishing schedules that they have. They're not a book a year publisher. They will tend to want kind of 2, 3, maybe even 4 books a year from their authors sometimes. Is that something that kind of fits in with your style and your pace, or is that something where you've had to kind of up your game a little bit in order to match that?
I think the thing initially it was a little bit strange because I do 2 books a year, but I spent an awful lot of years making up my own deadlines, which of course mean nothing. Nobody cared whether or not I met a deadline, or so it wasn't so much a deadline as a loose target of when I'd like to have it finished by, which, as I say, was dependent on nothing. So the first few books actually having a deadline that meant something, that I'd actually got to have the book finished by was definitely strange, but also kind of cool that it was a deadline that meant something, that, I did have to send it to somebody, rather than, just leave it on the computer. So I think over time I've adjusted to, the time scale, and writing 2 books a year I absolutely love. It keeps me busy, it keeps me interested, but it's also not too much that, I don't get to do other things and enjoy my time. I would be better if I probably spent less time on social media. I probably could get a 3rd book a year done.
Tell me about it. I know all about that.
That's another story.
Well, it is. Entire afternoons and mornings can disappear, can't they, in a world of tweet and Facebook.
Yeah, but again, that's all part of being the modern day author, I suppose,
yes,
isn't it? I mean, you mentioned earlier, Angela, the fact that it's a job where you're sitting in your office all day and you're writing away, and it's something I often say is it's quite a one-sided thing. You don't often get to speak to other authors until things like Facebook and Twitter came along. I mean, you said you'd gone 25 years and you hadn't kind of spoken to another writer. Writers didn't kind of write to each other as such unless they already knew each other beforehand. I mean, Facebook and Twitter has opened all that up. I mean, all crime authors now, we all kind of speak to each other on Facebook and Twitter, whether we've met each other or not. It's just kind of, I know your name, you know my name, and we talk to each other. And it's a similar thing with readers as well. It kind of opens up that dialogue, doesn't it? And it's completely changed the way the industry works.
It has, and I must say that one of my favourite things is to hear from readers. Like you say, it's so immediate now. Somebody will tweet they've just finished a book and they're starting another one, or they'll send you a Facebook message, or get emails through my website. And it's always humbling to hear something that, you've written that's touched somebody, or that's resonated with them, or that they've identified with. And I do find that really, really humbling. I mean, one of the first messages that I remember was a lady who told me that she'd read Silent Scream while having chemotherapy, and that it had kept her mind off it. And I read that message and burst into tears. I was so emotional, because you don't always you think of readers, but you don't always think of what they may be going through in their lives while reading the book. Do you know what I mean? And that really, really affected me. Not in a bad way. I was just so shocked. Yeah, it was just that she was reading my book while going through something so, traumatic and upsetting. And that brought it home to me. So when you get messages like that and from people who actually have identified with Kim Stone's character of having been in the care system and, that kind of thing, that's a really brilliant part of the job.
It goes to show the impact that your books have as well. The fact that, as you say, somebody going through something so horrific and traumatic can have their minds taken off that by reading the words that you've written. It's a very, very humbling thing, isn't it? It's I guess that's where the job becomes rewarding in those different ways.
It is because, as I say, you think of readers and you think that they're not so much skipping through life, but normal everyday things of shopping, kids, social life, and you don't always think of the problems that they may be going through. And so if you can cause even 10, 15 minutes of distraction from problems like that, then I'm just not sure what better reward there could possibly be.
I mean, your readers will be obviously delighted to know that there's a 16-book deal effectively on the table there, and that there are lots more D.I. Kim Stone books to come. I mean, do you have a kind of a wider story arc in mind for her? I mean, to have 16 book ideas, that are kind of strong enough for your publisher to say yes, we'll have those. Presumably, you must have a kind of a real long-term goal and vision for Kim.
I think the thing is with, I always try to write about the backdrop, to Kim is always something that interests me or intrigues me or something, that I want to learn more about. Like I've done, a book on body farm, a kidnap, ransom, all hate crimes was one of the most recent ones. So there's always a part of it that is a subject that interests me, so that the journey is enjoyable for me as well, because 90,000 words is a long journey. But no, I mean, as regards Kim herself, I don't tend to think too far in advance. I have the odd reader that will say, oh, she needs a good man, but then I'll have 25 readers that say, oh, no, she doesn't. As far as I'm concerned, no, she doesn't, because that's not what I want to write. I want to write, crime with a bit of humour to lighten the darkness. And she's got a sense of humour now and again, wry as it might be, sarcastic as it might be. So, if I was to settle her down with marriage and kids, it wouldn't be the voice that's in my head.
I mean, are the Kim Stone books what you're going to be mainly focusing on, or have you been tempted to kind of stray off the beaten path, either into a different crime series or different standalones, or to something totally different? I mean, I know you mentioned your two that have been repackaged by Bookershore, your two standalones which you self-published. Which is that Dear Mother and the Forgotten Woman? Is that the two?
Yeah, those are the two. At the moment, I've still got so much to explore with him and the rest of the team. And with doing 2 books a year, it's hard to find the time to do anything else. So at the moment, my focus is on that. But, I also like to try and, add a bit of focus to different members of the team with, the other characters. And let them shine a little bit. So you never know what might happen with, characters coming to the fore. And so there's a lot still to do with Kim and the rest of the team, really.
Well, I'm sure the readers are going to be very pleased to hear that there's a great number of books still to come.
And also readers, writers, I mean, there's no question, Angela, that you're a shining example of how tenacity, dedication and faith can lead to success, and I think that's quite an inspiring story for any would-be crime writers listening to this who are thinking, right, how do I get on? How do I find my dream and have the success that you so deservedly have now? I have to say, I must thank Adam for mentioning your wonderful parrot earlier. Otherwise, otherwise the elephant in the room would have been your parrot. And it's quite. I'm finding quite comforting listening to him in the background chattering away.
Julie is actually standing by him and has been the whole time. She's on crutches because her leg's not too good, but she's standing by the cage trying to keep him occupied so that he doesn't get into making his really high-pitched noises. that are like, they absolutely.
He's been so well behaved, Angela, and thank you, Julie, for doing that. Much appreciated. But it's been lovely having all three of you on the podcast. I think this has been a first.
A first parrot.
Our first parrot. Well, Angela, it's been such fun talking to you, and it's an inspiring story, and it's one that is continuing. And we've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. We've thoroughly enjoyed listening to your wonderful, wonderful parrot, and we give our thanks to Julie for helping out. Although did you say she's on crutches? If she is, we both wish her well, and very soon, and hopefully her parrot duties can cease from the moment we stop talking.
It's been lovely to chat to you,
and to you, Angela, all the very best to you.
All of Angela's books are available on Kobo, so why not give them a go? You don't need an e-reader or a special device. Just head over to kobo.com, find an Angela Marsons book of your choice, and enter the promo code CRIME at the checkout, and our very lovely sponsors, Kobo, will give you 90% off of the cost of that first book. It's really encouraging, wasn't it, Bob, to hear from Angela about how she can plod on for 25 years and still make it and sell an enormous number of books. I mean, and for her publisher to have such faith in her to give her 2 4-book deals and then an 8-book deal.
Well, the whole connection of that story is quite interesting. To actually go with an agency, a publisher, and a friend that fails, doesn't work out, and you give up hope, and then the next thing you get a phone call from that same person, friend, who says, "Look, I've got so much faith in you, I've recommended you to someone else." And then to find out that it's a publisher that you can work with and love and respect, and it's a two-way relationship, and then to go on to the huge success that she's managed to achieve. It's a terrific story. It's the sort of story that we love to hear on Partners in Crime, and she tells it very well. And what an absolutely delightful guest. As does her parrot. Yes, she is. Angela is the Dr. Dolittle of crime writers.
She's going to put that on the front of her books from now on. A quote on the book cover.
No, we haven't had an interview quite as vividly audio orientated with what do they call it, Foley, when you're
yes,
or whatever. But that was great, and a thought to Angela's partner standing there on crutches looking after the parrot.
It was absolutely fascinating story, and it just goes to show so many things in this industry do work like that. It is kind of somebody who mentions something to somebody, and things happen that way. It's kind of increasingly moving away from the whole, sending a query to an agent or a publisher and hearing something back.
But the bottom line is the story has to be good. The book has to be good, and there must be hundreds, thousands of good books that have been written that haven't had the good fortune that Angela has had. And when we say good fortune, it's very clear listening to Angela's story that she's put in an immense amount of work. She's had an immense amount of support over the years, and as I said in the introduction, sheer tenacity has won through. But that would go absolutely nowhere if stories she chooses to tell and continue to write, weren't of the extraordinary high standard that they are, and they weren't books that people absolutely loved. So it's a heady mix, it's a chemistry, and you have to try and get all those right. But the bottom line is you've got to write a good book.
Yes, if you've got any suggestions for guests on future shows, or if you've got something you want to say or get off your chest, something you'd like us to read out, then you can email us hello@partnersincrime.online. We're on Twitter @CrimeFicPodcast, and our Facebook page is facebook.com/partnersinCrimePodcast. I think that's about it. I think it's time for a lie down after all of these holidays.
Yes, I think we've been at it, really, haven't we? It's been exhilarating. It's been fun. It's been torturous logistically, but we've managed to get through. One question I've always meant to ask: 5 million books Kobo have got. Now, do they ever go like one over or one less than that? No. I think if they add a new book into their catalogue, they have to delete one, and I hear yours are next. So. Well, that's something I hear sadly all the time.
It's May next week. Can you believe it? As well,
It's not. It's space.
Yeah,
my
we
birthday.
started this in January. This podcast, having talked about it for the best part of a year. But yes, in fact, next week's episode will be your birthday.
Is it really?
Yes,
Well, that's going to be a shock for
Your Star
everyone.
Wars day, aren't you?
That's it. Well, we'll shave off our grey beards and try and put some moisturiser on our wrinkled faces.
Try and look a bit younger.
Sat at these microphones for 3 months
I know.
without a break. Well, we had that a few days by the sea, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't
And
enough.
we popped down to the dining room for an hour as well.
We did. Well, I'd do anything for a full English breakfast.
We'll be back next week then on Bob's birthday.
Sounds great, that.
We'll see you next week then when Bob's going to be old.
Partners in Crime was presented by Adam Croft and Robert Dawes and produced by Adam Croft. The theme tune was by the Caesareans. The Partners in Crime logo and imagery were designed by Stuart Beisch. Partners in Crime is sponsored by Kobo, your favourite local bookshop, perfected.